So the final barrier that I want us to talk about is psychological barriers. Think about it. We all have these, what is it called? We all have these mental sort of, talk about a window through which we look at the world. And that window is shaped by many things. For the most part, it depends on the information we had, and then the information we have will change our belief system, and our belief system will change our attitude towards something, and then our attitude will determine whether we act or we don't towards a given thing. So you say maths is difficult. It kind of just depends on your attitude towards maths, right? The lecture is boring, which sort of just depends on two things. Probably it is boring, or maybe it's just your attitude towards that particular lecture. Psychological barriers may be due to some social or psychological problem. This barrier will include things like, number one, attitude, opinion, self-image. Self-image, self-concept. How do you view yourself versus how do others view you? And then in between there, you end up having identity crisis. Okay? The degree to which you think this is what you look like, and you actually find out that this is what people think you look like. In between there, that difference can create a bunch of problems. And so you end up saying, I'm dressing this way to express myself. I have to draw this big tattoo on my face or whatever it is. I mean, look. Yeah, well, people are complicated, man. And the way you view yourself, personality and all that stuff, it's just complex. And so because of the way you view yourself kind of makes it a reason why you find it necessary to defend your message, because you think, well, this is what I believe in and this is what I've just said. And when that person contradicts it, to some degree, they're attacking me, myself. And so I have to defend myself. And then you become defensive. And for the most part, probably you are right, or maybe it's just as a result of how you perceive yourself. And that can become a psychological problem when you're communicating. Now, our opinion, okay? We defend our opinion. And sometimes your opinion is not even right. First of all, everybody has an opinion. The problem is when you start assuming that everybody should conform to your opinion. Because you say, rich people are blah, 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 and therefore everybody's supposed to accept that. Or poor people are poor because of, and then everybody's supposed to accept that. And if they don't, you think it's a personal attack on you, and that becomes a problem when you're communicating. And all that kind of just shape your feeling towards something, which is the attitude. And as we've already pointed out, our attitude kind of make us do something or not to do a thing. And that is a psychological problem. I mean, it's not a psychology class, this one. It's communication. But you feel like go read psychology about, personalities and all that, and it will make sense to you. But for now, just think of it that way, okay? Number next, resistance to change, which is also closely related to defensiveness. Why do people resist change? Because, you sort of just, it's like, you could put your hands this way and you feel comfortable. I mean, you can try that, right? Just interlock your fingers, feeling comfortable, right? Now, try changing them. How does that feel? You definitely feel uncomfortable. So that is the thing about change. And that is the reason why people, once they get into a position, right? You get into a position and your brain's first thing is to make yourself, or to make itself, whichever way you want to look at it, comfortable in that discomfort. And so you get comfortable, right? And then somebody walks along and says, hey, it's time for us to change and start doing things this way. And I'm thinking, why? I mean, I'm already comfortable. And that is why you have to not just tell people to change. You have to sell the benefits that come with change, and gradually they are going to change. Otherwise, they'll just be defensive. And so those are two psychological barriers: resistance to change, defensiveness. Defend your name, defend your position, and all that stuff. We also have status consciousness. Status consciousness is one of those things that is as a result of stratification. And you probably think, no, we are all equal. Yep. Biology, human beings are equal. Heart, blood, and all that stuff that comes with being a human being. But as far as how society views us, no, there is always going to be stratification, meaning people are always going to be ranked according to many factors. Birth, okay, which is, what can you do about it? Some people are born in rich families, others in poor families, others are born with these skin colors, not that is a ground for you to discriminate people. I'm just saying, well, it happens. It's not a good thing, but it happens, right? Kind of sucks, but politics, okay? I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm this, I'm that. And somehow you assume that is the way the world is supposed to be. So that's a problem. Wealth, poor, rich, education, okay? It's binary, uneducated, educated. I'm on this level of education, you're on that level, and therefore whatever. And most of these things tend to be psychological because if you take something like education, for instance, if you think that you have a PhD and therefore you're very educated, yeah, your papers do say you are educated. But then the problem is when it comes to solving a certain problem and you realize that you have a PhD in something to do with, I don't know, what, maths, whatever, and now you're talking about music, and then you're stuck there. Okay. The point is, all these stratification serve a purpose, yes, but then it becomes a problem if that is the way you want people to see you. If you're in an organization and you think, I cannot talk to my subordinates because they will think me being a superior talking to my subordinates might actually find out that I don't know something and then they won't respect me. And then you have a subordinate who thinks, I'm not going to talk to the superior because they'll realize that I don't know something and then they might just end up firing me. And so you see, that creates a problem. The point is, status consciousness is one of those situations that is, it's there and it becomes a barrier to communication as a result of the psychological makeup. So when you get so caught up in your position, you're like, I want people to see me as the guy who drives that Ferrari. I want people to see me as the guy who drives that Mercedes or the guy who lives in that big house. And so if they don't recognize that, then you have a problem. And you kind of see these when people are sort of introducing themselves. Then they'll be like, I'm Dr. Reverend, whatever, all that crap before they get to their name. And like, okay, what was the point with all those titles? Because they want you to realize that they're of a better status, which could be important. Most of the time it isn't, but it could be important. The point is, it's a psychological barrier to communication. It's not a psychological problem. It's just a psychological barrier to communication. Because if they fail to identify your status, then you might say, I'm not listening to anything else they say. So that's a problem, right? So there are many barriers to communication. In exams, you don't have to say psychological, blah, blah, blah. You can just jump straight into giving examples of these barriers, and then that is if you're doing this for exam purposes, which probably are.